The news of Ethan Carter's death spread like wildfire across Earth and its colonies. It wasn't just a tragedy. It was a declaration that humanity could no longer afford to ignore the dangers lurking in the vastness of space. The video footage, showing the aliens' brutal attack on an innocent child, became the centerpiece of countless broadcasts, fueling outrage and grief on a global scale. Streets filled with protesters holding signs that read, "Justice for Ethan and no more silence." People everywhere demanded answers and retribution. In Washington, D.C., President Laura Hayes sat at the head of a long, polished table in the Situation Room. Around her were some of the most powerful people on Earth: General Ryan Mitchell, a grizzled veteran with decades of military experience; Admiral Julia Dawson, the calm but sharp-eyed leader of Earth's space fleet; and several other high-ranking officials from various nations. The air was thick with tension as everyone processed what had happened. For years, humanity had tried to maintain peaceful relations with alien species, even when those efforts felt one-sided or strained. But this time, patience had run out. "We can't let this stand," General Mitchell said, breaking the silence. His voice was firm, almost harsh. "If we don't respond, every hostile race out there will think they can do whatever they want to us. They'll see us as weak." Admiral Dawson nodded slowly, her fingers tapping lightly against the edge of the table. "I agree," she said, "but we need to be smart about this. Acting out of anger won't solve anything. We have to show them that humanity is united, and that we're willing to protect ourselves, no matter the cost." President Hayes leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. Her expression was a mix of sorrow and determination. "This isn't just about revenge," she said quietly. "It's about sending a message. If we don't act, more children, like Ethan, will die. More families will suffer, and I won't allow that to happen under my watch." The room fell silent again as the weight of her words sank in. Everyone knew what was coming next: the deployment of the Leviathan. For years, the existence of the planet-sized warship had been Earth's best-kept secret. Only a handful of people outside the highest levels of government even knew it existed. Now, faced with the unthinkable, the decision had been made to unveil it to the world and use it, far above Earth, orbiting silently in the darkness of space. The Leviathan loomed like a sleeping giant. From the outside, it looked less like a ship and more like a small moon, its surface dotted with glowing lights and massive engines capable of bending the fabric of space itself. Inside, however, it was alive with activity. Thousands of engineers, technicians, and crew members worked tirelessly to prepare the vessel for its maiden voyage. Daniel Brooks stood near the main reactor core, watching as streams of energy pulsed through transparent conduits lining the walls. As one of the lead engineers responsible for designing the Leviathan, he knew every inch of the ship intimately. Yet seeing it fully operational still took his breath away. This wasn't just a machine. It was humanity's greatest achievement, a symbol of hope and resilience. But now it was also a weapon. "Everything checks out," Daniel muttered to himself, scrolling through a tablet displaying diagnostics. He glanced up at the towering machinery around him, feeling a pang of unease. Building something so powerful had always come with risks, but now those risks felt personal. Would using the Leviathan bring justice, or ignite a war that could destroy everything? Nearby, Captain Olivia Grant walked briskly down a corridor lined with windows overlooking the ship's interior city. Despite her composed demeanor, she couldn't shake the image of Ethan's frightened face from her mind. She had watched the surveillance footage repeatedly, analyzing every detail, trying to understand how such cruelty could exist. Each time, she felt the same surge of anger and sadness. "Captain," called a voice behind her. Olivia turned to see Lieutenant Alex Rivera jogging to catch up. A young officer with a quick smile and sharp instincts, Rivera had quickly earned her trust during training exercises. "We've got the final crew manifest ready for review," he said, handing her a datapad. "Everyone's on board and accounted for." Olivia nodded, scanning the list of names. Over 10,000 men and women had volunteered for this mission. knowing full well the dangers involved. Some were soldiers, others scientists, engineers, and medical staff. All of them shared one goal: protecting humanity. "Thank you, Lieutenant," she said. "Make sure everyone knows their roles. Once we leave orbit, there's no turning back." Rivera saluted and hurried off, leaving Olivia alone with her thoughts. She paused by a window, gazing out at the swirling blue and white orb of Earth below. So much rested on her shoulders. If she failed, the consequences would ripple across generations. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself why she had taken this job. Justice, protection, hope. These were the things worth fighting for. Back on Proxima Centauri B, Ethan's parents struggled to cope with their loss. James Carter sat slumped in a chair, staring blankly at the wall while Laura clung to a photo of their son. The colony had rallied around them, offering condolences and support, but nothing could fill the void left by Ethan's absence. Every sound, every movement seemed to remind them of him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ambassador William Hayes arrived at their home. A tall man with kind eyes and a gentle voice, Hayes had been tasked with delivering difficult news before, but never like this. He knocked softly on the door and stepped inside when James waved him in. "I'm sorry to intrude," Hayes began, taking a seat across from them. "I know this is a hard time for both of you, but I wanted to personally assure you that Earth is taking action. Your son's death, it won't be forgotten." James looked up, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. "What does that mean?" he asked, hoarsely. "Are you going to talk to these monsters? Try to reason with them?" Hayes hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Diplomacy will be our first step," he explained. "We'll send envoys to speak with the species responsible, but if they refuse to take responsibility, or if negotiations fail, we're prepared to escalate." Laura gripped the photo tighter, her knuckles turning white. "Escalate how?" she whispered. Hayes met her gaze steadily. "Earth has developed new capabilities," he said. "Capabilities designed to ensure our survival. If necessary, we'll use them to hold those responsible accountable." For a moment, neither James nor Laura spoke. Then James nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face. "Good," he said, his voice barely audible. "They need to pay for what they did." As Hayes left the house, he couldn't help but feel conflicted. While he understood the Carters' desire for justice, he also knew the complexities of interstellar politics. Not all conflicts could be resolved with force, and not all enemies were rational. Still, he carried their pain with him, vowing to honor Ethan's memory in whatever way he could. Meanwhile, preparations for diplomacy continued alongside plans for war. Ambassador Hayes assembled a team of negotiators, linguists, and cultural experts to accompany him on a diplomatic mission to Proxima Centauri B's neighboring systems. Their goal was simple: identify the species responsible for Ethan's death and demand accountability. If successful, they might avoid bloodshed altogether. But skepticism lingered among Earth's leaders. "Do you really think they'll listen?" Admiral Dawson asked during a private meeting with Hayes. "From what we've seen, these aliens aren't exactly known for their cooperation." Hayes sighed, rubbing his temples. "Probably not," he admitted. "But we owe it to ourselves and to Ethan to try. War should always be a last resort." Dawson nodded reluctantly. "Just make sure your team stays safe," she said. "If things go south, we may not be able to extract you in time." With that ominous warning hanging over them, Hayes and his team boarded a sleek diplomatic cruiser bound for the stars. As they departed, Earth braced itself for whatever came next. Whether through words or weapons, humanity was determined to confront the forces that had shattered the fragile peace of the cosmos. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Leviathan waited, its engines humming softly, ready to unleash the IOR, full might of Earth upon those who dared threaten its children. The sun was setting over the colony of Proxima Centauri B, casting a warm orange glow across the landscape. The air smelled faintly of metallic dust, mixed with the earthy scent of alien plants swaying gently in the breeze. Ethan Carter, a curious, 8-year-old boy with messy blonde hair and bright blue eyes, wandered along the edge of the settlement where humans had built their homes. His sneakers crunched against the rocky ground as he kicked at small stones. Lost in his own world of imagination, Ethan loved exploring. To him, every corner of this strange new planet felt like an adventure waiting to happen. He'd grown up hearing stories about Earth, how it was green and blue, covered in oceans and forests. But he couldn't picture it. This place, with its red skies and jagged mountains, was all he knew. Today, though, something caught his attention far beyond the usual sights of the colony. A group of aliens had landed just outside the perimeter fence, and they were busy unloading crates from their ship. Ethan hesitated for a moment, glancing back toward the cluster of domed buildings that made up the human settlement. Most days, his parents warned him not to go too far alone, especially near the borders where unfamiliar visitors sometimes stopped by. But today, curiosity got the better place. The aliens looked different from any species he'd seen before. Their bodies shimmered faintly, almost translucent, and their movements were slow and deliberate, as if they floated rather than walked. They didn't seem dangerous, at least not to Ethan. He took a step closer, then another, until he stood only a few meters away from them. One of the aliens noticed him immediately. Its head tilted slightly, studying him with what appeared to be glowing, oval-shaped eyes. Ethan smiled nervously and waved. "Hi," he said softly, unsure if the creature could understand him. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, one of the other aliens turned around, its long, spindly limbs moving gracefully. It pointed, directly at Ethan, uttering a series of sharp, guttural sounds. Ethan froze. Something about their tone sent a shiver down his spine, but he told himself it was probably just excitement. Maybe they were surprised to see a human child so close. Slowly, he took another step forward, holding out his hands as if to show he meant no harm. "I'm Ethan." He tried again, speaking louder this time. Do you speak English?" The aliens exchanged more noises, some clicking, others rumbling deep in their throats. None of it sounded friendly. Ethan started to feel uneasy. Perhaps coming here hadn't been such a good idea after all. Just as he was about to turn and run back to the safety of the colony, one of the aliens suddenly lunged toward him. Its movements were shockingly fast, completely contradicting the sluggish way it had moved earlier. Before Ethan could react, the alien grabbed him by the arm. Pain shot through his tiny body as its grip tightened, squeezing hard enough to make him cry out. Tears welled up in his eyes as he struggled to break free, but the alien was impossibly strong. Another member of the group joined in, wrapping thin tendrils around Ethan's legs and pulling him off the ground. He screamed now, thrashing wildly, calling for help, but there was no one nearby to hear him. Back at the colony, people went about their evening routines, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding just beyond their borders. Children played inside transparent domes while adults prepared meals or worked on repairing equipment damaged during recent storms. No alarms blared, no shouts echoed through the streets. Only silence greeted Ethan's cries, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the alien wilderness. The aliens dragged Ethan closer to their ship, ignoring his pleas and sobs. Whatever they intended to do with him, it was clear they didn't care about his fear or his humanity. When they reached the base of their vessel, one of them raised a claw-like appendage and struck him across the face. The blow silenced Ethan instantly, leaving him dazed and bleeding. Still clutching him tightly, the aliens began to lift him onto the ramp leading into their craft. It was then that the unthinkable happened. Without warning, one of the aliens released a burst of energy from its palm, striking Ethan squarely in the chest. The force of the blast knocked him backward, sending him sprawling onto the rocky ground. His small body convulsed once, twice, and then fell still. Lifeless. Gone. For several seconds, the aliens simply stood there, staring down at the motionless form of the boy. There was no remorse in their actions, no hesitation. To them, Ethan was nothing more than an inconvenience, a nuisance easily disposed of. After exchanging a few more clicks and growls, they turned and boarded their ship, leaving his body behind as if it were trash. Hours later, when Ethan failed to return home, his parents grew worried. James and Laura Carter searched frantically throughout the colony, asking neighbors if anyone had seen their son. Panic set in when no one had answers. Finally, someone suggested checking the surveillance drones patrolling the outskirts of the settlement. What they found chilled them to the bone. The footage showed everything: the encounter, the struggle, the brutal attack, and finally, Ethan's lifeless body lying abandoned on the ground. James collapsed to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably, while Laura clutched her chest, unable to breathe. Neither could believe what they were seeing. How could something so horrific happen? Why would anyone or anything do this to a child? News of Ethan's death spread quickly through the colony. People gathered in stunned silence, many crying openly, others shaking with anger. By morning, the story had reached Earth via faster-than-light communication relays. Across the planet, billions watched the video, horrified and enraged. Social media erupted with calls for justice. Protesters filled the streets of major cities, chanting slogans demanding action against the aliens responsible. President Laura Hayes convened an emergency session of the United Nations Space Council. Leaders from every nation listened intently as she described the events leading up to Ethan's murder. Her voice trembled with emotion as she concluded, "This is not just an attack on one family. It's an attack on all of humanity. We cannot allow this act of barbarism to go unanswered." As debates raged within government chambers, whispers began circulating about Earth's secret weapon. Rumors spoke of a massive warship unlike anything ever constructed, a vessel so large it dwarfed entire planets. Known only to a select few, this warship had been designed specifically for scenarios like this, when diplomacy failed and humanity needed to defend itself with overwhelming power. Now, for the first time, the decision was being considered to deploy it. In orbit above Earth, hidden behind layers of classified shielding, lay the Leviathan. Built over decades in absolute secrecy, the warship housed entire cities within its structure, complete with parks, schools, and hospitals. Its engines hummed quietly, ready to propel it across light years of space at a moment's notice. And its weapon systems were capable of obliterating entire civilizations if necessary. Engineer Daniel Brooks stood on the observation deck of the Leviathan, staring out at the stars. He had spent years working on this project, pouring his heart and soul into creating something that could protect humanity from threats both known and unknown. Yet now, faced with the prospect of actually using it, he felt uneasy. Was this really the right path? Could revenge ever justify the destruction of another species? Captain Olivia Grant shared similar doubts, as the commanding officer chosen to lead the Leviathan into battle. She carried the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She thought often of Ethan, imagining the terror he must have felt in his final moments. Justice seemed necessary, but at what cost? These questions haunted her as she prepared her crew for what might become humanity's first interstellar war. Meanwhile, back on Proxima Centauri B, Ethan's body was recovered and brought back to the colony. His parents sat beside him, holding his cold hand and whispering words of love. They vowed never to let his memory fade, promising to fight for a future where no child would suffer as he had. Little did they know, their grief would soon ignite a chain reaction that would change the course of history, not just for humans, but for the entire galaxy. The hum of the Leviathan's engines filled the vast corridors of the ship as it prepared to leave Earth's orbit. For the first time in its existence, the planet-sized warship was about to embark on a mission that could change the course of human history. Inside, the crew moved with purpose, each person aware of the gravity of what they were about to do. Some carried expressions of determination, others of quiet fear. But all shared a single unifying goal: justice for Ethan Carter and for humanity. Captain Olivia Grant stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back as she stared out at the stars through the massive viewport. The view was breathtaking, but her mind wasn't on the beauty of space. She thought instead of the boy whose death had brought them here. 8 years old, just a child. How could anyone harm someone so young and innocent? The image of Ethan's frightened face haunted her every waking moment, driving her forward even when doubt crept in. "Captain," Lieutenant Alex Rivera said, approaching her cautiously, "all systems are green. We're ready to depart whenever you give the order." Olivia nodded without turning around. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Begin the countdown sequence." As Rivera relayed the command to the rest of the crew, Olivia finally turned to face the bustling activity behind her. Engineers monitored consoles, pilots adjusted flight paths, and medical teams conducted last-minute checks on supplies. The sheer scale of the operation was overwhelming, yet everyone worked together seamlessly. This was no ordinary mission. It required precision, focus, and unity. On the lower decks, Daniel Brooks walked among the technicians who were double-checking the ship's critical systems. As one of the lead engineers, he felt a deep sense of responsibility for ensuring the Leviathan performed flawlessly. He stopped beside a young woman named Sarah, who was running diagnostics on the reactor core. "How's it looking?" Daniel asked, peering over her shoulder at the glowing screen. "Everything's stable," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "But I've got my fingers crossed anyway." Daniel chuckled softly. "We all do," he said. "This isn't just another test run. If anything goes wrong out there..." He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the silence between them. Sarah nodded solemnly. "I know. Don't worry. We won't let you down." Satisfied, Daniel moved on to the next station, where a group of engineers was inspecting the weapon systems. Massive cannons lined the outer hull of the Leviathan, capable of firing bursts of energy powerful enough to shatter asteroids or entire planets. Though the thought of using such destructive force made Daniel uneasy, he reminded himself why they were doing this. Humanity couldn't afford to appear weak, not after what had happened to Ethan. Back on the bridge, the countdown reached its final moments. The crew held their breath as Olivia gave the order to engage the engines. A low rumble vibrated through the ship as the Leviathan began to move, slowly at first, then faster. Outside, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was nothing more than a pale blue dot against the endless blackness of space. For many aboard the ship, leaving Earth behind was an emotional experience. Some had families waiting for them back home, others left behind friends or loved ones. Yet none of them hesitated. They understood the stakes. If they failed, Earth itself might be next. As the ship sailed deeper into the void, Captain Grant called for a meeting with her senior officers. Gathered around a circular table in the briefing room, the team reviewed their objectives and discussed potential challenges. General Ryan Mitchell, who had joined the mission as a military advisor, leaned forward, his grizzled face etched with concern. "We need to be clear about our priorities," he said. "Our primary goal is to locate the species responsible for Ethan's death and hold them accountable, but we also have to prepare for the possibility that they won't cooperate. If diplomacy fails, we'll need to act decisively." Admiral Julia Dawson, seated beside him, nodded in agreement. "And we can't underestimate the psychological toll this mission will take on the crew," she added. "Many of them haven't faced combat before. We'll need to provide support not just physically but mentally as well." Dr. Emily Ross, the ship's psychologist, raised her hand slightly to speak. "I've already begun organizing counseling, sessions for anyone who needs them," she said. "But I'd urge everyone to keep an eye out for signs of stress or anxiety. This kind of situation can weigh heavily on people, especially when emotions are running high." Olivia listened carefully, absorbing their words. She knew the importance of maintaining morale during such a critical mission. Turning to Lieutenant Rivera, she asked, "What's the status of our intelligence on the aliens?" Rivera tapped a few keys on his tablet, pulling up a holographic display of the alien species suspected of killing Ethan. "From what we've gathered, they're known as the Vrin," he explained. "They're traders mostly. but they've been involved in several violent incidents in the past. Their behavior suggests they don't value human life, or any life really, as highly as we do. That doesn't excuse what they did, Olivia said firmly, but it gives us insight into how they operate. Let's assume they'll try to avoid responsibility if confronted directly. We'll need to approach them carefully. The meeting concluded with a renewed sense of purpose. Each officer returned to their post, determined to carry out their duties to the best of their ability. Meanwhile, Olivia retreated to her quarters, seeking a moment of solitude. Sitting at her desk, she opened a file containing images and reports related to Ethan's death. She studied them closely, committing every detail to memory. Failure was not an option. Elsewhere on the ship, life continued as normally as possible under the circumstances. In the recreation areas, crew members gathered to share meals, play games, or simply talk. Conversations often turned to the mission, with debates breaking out about whether violence was truly the answer. Some argued that destroying the Vryn would only perpetuate the cycle of hatred, while others believed it was the only way to ensure safety for future generations. One evening, Daniel found himself sitting with a small group of engineers in the mess hall. They laughed and joked, trying to lighten the mood, but the underlying tension was impossible to ignore. When the conversation shifted to Ethan, Daniel spoke up. "I keep thinking about him," he admitted, "about how scared he must have been. And I wonder, does building something like the Leviathan make us any better than the people who hurt him?" A young man named Jake shrugged. "Maybe not," he said. "But sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. If we don't stand up for ourselves, who will?" Daniel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he stared down at his plate, lost in thought. Was Jake right? Or was there another way, a better way, to resolve conflicts? He wished he had answers, but for now, all he could do was trust that their mission served a greater good. Days passed as the Leviathan traveled closer to Proxima Centauri b. Along the way, the crew received updates from Ambassador Hayes and his diplomatic team, who were attempting to negotiate with the Vryn. Initial reports weren't promising. The aliens refused to acknowledge their role in Ethan's death, dismissing the accusations as baseless. Their arrogance infuriated those aboard the warship, fueling their resolve to confront them head-on. Finally, the day arrived when the Leviathan entered the Proxima Centauri system. Through the viewport, the crew could see the faint glow of the red dwarf star illuminating the surrounding planets. It was a stark contrast to the warm light of Earth's sun, reminding everyone just how far they had come, and how isolated they truly were. As the ship approached the coordinates where the Vryn had last been spotted, Captain Grant addressed the entire crew via intercom. "This is it," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We're here to demand justice for Ethan Carter and to protect humanity from those who seek to harm us. Stay focused, stay strong, and remember why we're doing this. Together we will show the galaxy that Earth will not tolerate injustice. Not today, not ever." Her words echoed through the corridors of the Leviathan, rallying the spirits of everyone aboard. Whatever lay ahead, they were ready to face it. For Ethan, for Earth, for the future. The Proxima Centauri system loomed ahead, its red dwarf star casting a dim glow over the rocky planets and asteroid belts that surrounded it. The Leviathan moved silently through the void, its massive form dwarfing everything in its path. On the bridge, Captain Olivia Grant stood with her arms crossed, watching as the ship's sensors scanned for signs of the Vryn. The crew worked tirelessly, their faces tense but focused. Everyone knew this was the moment they had been preparing for. Ambassador William Hayes and his diplomatic team had already made contact with the Vryn, attempting to negotiate before the Leviathan arrived. Their efforts, however, had been met with hostility and disdain. The aliens refused to take responsibility for Ethan's death, claiming ignorance and accusing humanity of aggression. When pressed further, they grew defensive, cutting off communication entirely. Now, with diplomacy failing, it fell to the Leviathan to deliver Earth's message loud and clear. Captain, Lieutenant Alex Rivera called out, breaking the silence. We've detected a Vrin trading vessel near the edge of the system. It matches the description of the ship seen in the surveillance footage. Olivia turned sharply, her eyes narrowing. Are you sure? She asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. Yes, ma'am, Rivera replied. It's them. Olivia nodded, her jaw tightening. Prepare a boarding party, she ordered, and send a message to the Vrin. Tell them we know they're responsible for Ethan Carter's death and demand their immediate surrender. The message was transmitted, carried by a burst of energy that crackled across the distance between the two ships. Moments later, the Vrin responded, not with words but with weapons fire. Bright streaks of plasma erupted from their vessel, striking the Leviathan's shields with little effect. The warship's defenses absorbed the blows, effortlessly, a testament to its unparalleled engineering. They're attacking us, someone shouted from the crew pit. Return fire, Olivia commanded, her tone cold and unwavering. Disable their engines, but don't destroy them. We need answers. The order rippled through the ship, reaching the gunnery stations where operators waited anxiously for their chance to strike back. With a thunderous roar, the Leviathan's cannons unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one precise and devastating. The Vrin ship shuddered under the assault, its shields collapsing, almost instantly. Within moments, their engines sputtered and died, leaving the alien vessel drifting helplessly in space. On the bridge, cheers broke out among the crew. For many, this was their first real taste of victory, a small but significant step toward justice. But Olivia remained calm, her expression unreadable. This wasn't over yet. Prepare the shuttle, she said. I'm leading the boarding party myself. Lieutenant Rivera stepped forward, concern etched on his face. Ma'am, are you sure? It could be dangerous. I'm aware of the risks, Olivia replied firmly. But I need to see this through personally. If we're going to hold them accountable, I want to look them in the eye. With that, she turned and headed for the hangar bay, assembling a team of soldiers and scientists to accompany her. Among them was Dr. Emily Ross, who volunteered to assess the psychological state of the Vrin captives. Though her role was primarily supportive, she insisted on being part of the mission, believing that understanding their mindset might help prevent future tragedies. The shuttle detached from the Leviathan and approached the damaged Vrin vessel cautiously. As they docked, the air grew thick with anticipation. Armed guards led the way, their weapons drawn as they entered the alien craft. Inside, the environment was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of failing systems. The walls shimmered with an iridescent glow, casting strange patterns on the floor. They found the Vrin huddled together in what appeared to be a control room. There were 6 of them, their translucent forms flickering weakly, evidence of their deteriorating condition. One of them, larger than the rest, stepped forward, its glowing eyes locked onto Olivia. You dare attack us? The creature hissed, its voice distorted and guttural. We are traitors, not warriors. Olivia didn't flinch. You killed a human child, she said, her voice cutting like steel. An innocent boy named Ethan Carter. You can deny it all you want, but the truth is undeniable. Your actions have consequences. The Vrin leader recoiled, though whether from guilt or anger was unclear. We did not kill your child, it spat. He approached us uninvited. He provoked us. That's a lie, Olivia snapped, her patience wearing thin. Ethan was 8 years old. He posed no threat to you. You murdered him in cold blood. The alien hesitated, its shimmering form wavering slightly. Then, after a long pause, it spoke again. Even if it is true, he was nothing to us. A nuisance. A mistake. The words hit the room like a punch to the gut. Gasps echoed among the humans, followed by murmurs of outrage. Olivia clenched her fists, struggling to keep her emotions in check. She wanted nothing more than to lash out, to make them pay for their callousness. But she forced herself to stay composed. This mistake has cost you everything, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Your freedom, your ship, perhaps even your lives. Humanity will not tolerate such cruelty. You will answer for what you've done. At her signal, the guards moved forward, securing the Vryn with restraints designed to neutralize their abilities. The aliens offered little resistance, their arrogance replaced by fear as they realized the gravity of their situation. They were loaded onto the shuttle and transported back to the Leviathan, where they would await trial. Back on the warship, news of the capture spread quickly, lifting spirits throughout the crew. For the first time since Ethan's death, there was a sense of closure, a belief that justice might finally be within reach. But not everyone shared in the celebration. In the medical bay, Dr. Ross observed the Vryn prisoners closely, studying their behavior and interactions. What she saw troubled her deeply. These creatures weren't remorseful, they were terrified, not of punishment but of something else, something bigger. "Captain," she said later, during a private debriefing, "I think there's more to this story than we realize. The Vryn, they act like they're following orders, like someone, or something, is pulling their strings." Olivia frowned, leaning back in her chair. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we should consider the possibility that the Vryn aren't the masterminds behind Ethan's death," Ross explained. "They may have acted on behalf of another species, one far more powerful and manipulative. The implications were staggering. If the Vryn were merely pawns, then holding them accountable wouldn't bring true justice. The real culprits would still be out there, free to orchestrate similar atrocities in the future. We need to investigate further," Olivia decided. "Find out who's influencing the Vryn. Until we do, this mission isn't over." As the crew digested this new information, tensions began to rise. Some argued that pursuing the shadowy figures behind the scenes would only prolong the conflict, while others believed it was the only way to ensure lasting peace. Amid the debate, one thing remained clear. Humanity couldn't afford to let its guard down. Not now, not ever. For James and Laura Carter, Ethan's parents, the news of the Vryn's capture brought mixed emotions. Relief washed over them, knowing that those directly responsible for their son's death had been apprehended. Yet sadness lingered, a constant reminder of the life they had lost. Sitting together in their quarters aboard the Leviathan, they clung to each other, finding solace in shared grief. "He would have loved this adventure," Laura whispered, tears streaming down her face. "All these stars, he always dreamed of exploring them." James nodded, his throat tight. "Maybe someday people will remember him for more than just how he died. Maybe they'll remember how much he loved life." Far above, the Leviathan sailed onward, its course set for answers and vengeance. Whatever lay ahead, the crew was ready to face it. For Ethan, for humanity, and for the hope of a brighter future. The Vryn prisoners sat silently in their holding cells aboard the Leviathan, their shimmering forms dimmed by the artificial lighting. Each cell was designed to suppress their unique energy signatures, rendering them powerless and vulnerable. For beings accustomed to dominance through intimidation, this loss of control was unbearable. They huddled together, whispering in low tones that no human could understand. Their glowing eyes darted nervously toward the guards stationed outside their cells, but they dared not speak louder or act out. Dr. Emily Ross observed them from behind a one-way glass panel, her brow furrowed in thought. She had spent hours analyzing their behavior, searching for any clue that might confirm her suspicions about a hidden puppet master pulling the strings. So far, the evidence was circumstantial. Subtle cues in their body language, moments of hesitation before answering questions, but it was enough to keep her digging deeper. "They're scared," she said aloud, though no one else was there to hear her. "Not just of us, but of something bigger, something they don't want to talk about." Back on the bridge, Captain Olivia Grant reviewed the latest intelligence reports alongside Lieutenant Alex Rivera and General Ryan Mitchell. The capture of the Vryn had been a significant victory, but it raised more questions than answers. Why would traitors like the Vryn risk provoking humanity over a single child? What could possibly motivate such cruelty? "We need to interrogate them further," Olivia said, tapping a finger against the table. If they're working for someone else, we have to find out who and why. Rivera nodded. I'll assign a team to work with Dr. Ross. Maybe she can get them to open up. But extracting information from the Vryn wouldn't be easy. Their species communicated using a complex mix of sounds, gestures, and bioluminescent signals, making translation difficult even with advanced technology. Worse still, they seemed determined to remain silent, unless absolutely necessary. Every attempt to question them ended in frustration as they dodged direct answers or feigned ignorance. In one particularly tense session, Dr. Ross tried appealing to their sense of self-preservation. Standing in front of the cell, she addressed the leader of the group directly. "You've already lost," she said calmly, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. "Your ship is destroyed, your freedom gone. But if you cooperate, if you tell us who gave you those orders, you might still survive this. Isn't that worth it?" The Vryn leader stared at her for a long moment, its oval-shaped eyes flickering faintly. Then, without warning, it lunged forward, slamming its translucent form against the force field separating them. The sudden movement startled everyone in the room, including the armed guard standing nearby. "You think you scare us?" the alien hissed, its voice distorted and guttural. "You are nothing compared to what waits for you." Ross took a step back, her heart racing. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. "Who's waiting for us?" But the Vryn leader refused to elaborate, retreating to the far corner of its cell and refusing to speak again. Frustrated but undeterred, Ross reported the exchange to Olivia, who listened intently. "They're hiding something big," Ross concluded. "Whatever, or whoever, they're afraid of, it's powerful enough to make them willing to die rather than betray." Olivia sighed, rubbing her temples. "This changes things. If there's another player involved, we need to identify them before moving forward. Otherwise, we're walking into a trap." Meanwhile, life aboard the Leviathan continued as best it could under the circumstances. For many crew members, the presence of the Vryn prisoners served as a grim reminder of why they were here. Conversations often turned to Ethan Carter, with people sharing stories they'd heard about him or speculating about what kind of person he might have grown up to be. Some found comfort in imagining him as a brave explorer, destined to chart new worlds. Others simply mourned the innocence stolen from him too soon. James and Laura Carter spent most of their time in private, finding solace in each other's company. Though grateful for the progress made so far, they couldn't shake the feeling that justice still felt incomplete. Knowing the Vryn were captured brought some measure of relief, but the knowledge that larger forces might be at play left them uneasy. "I wish I could hate them," Laura admitted one evening, her voice trembling. "But all I feel is sadness for Ethan, and for whatever twisted world taught them to act like this." James wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "We'll get answers," he promised, "no matter how long it takes." As days passed, Daniel Brooks grew increasingly restless. As one of the lead engineers responsible for maintaining the Leviathan, he rarely interacted with the prisoners, but their presence weighed heavily on his mind. He often wondered if humanity was any better than the Vryn, given the sheer scale of destruction their warship represented. During late-night conversations with Sarah, his fellow engineer, he voiced these concerns. "What if we're becoming exactly what we're fighting against?" he asked, staring at the glowing conduits lining the walls of the engineering bay. "All this power, all this anger, where does it end?" Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder, offering a small smile. "It ends when we decide it does," she replied. "We're not doing this because we enjoy hurting others. We're doing it because we have to protect ourselves and our future." Her words offered little comfort, but Daniel appreciated the sentiment. Still, he couldn't shake the nagging doubt gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. Elsewhere in the galaxy, Ambassador William Hayes and his diplomatic team worked tirelessly to gather more information about the mysterious figures potentially influencing the Vryn. Traveling to nearby star systems, they sought allies among other alien species, hoping someone might shed light on the shadowy organization hinted at during their interrogation. Their efforts yielded mixed results. Some races dismissed their inquiries outright, unwilling to risk angering the unknown powers Hayes described. Others expressed cautious interest but claimed ignorance, fearing retaliation if they spoke too freely. Yet amidst the uncertainty, one name kept surfacing, a species known only as the Krylos. Who are they? Hayes asked a trader from a neutral planet during a clandestine meeting in a crowded spaceport cantina. The trader glanced around nervously, lowering his voice. No one knows much about them, he admitted. They stay hidden, pulling strings, from the shadows. Some say they manipulate weaker species, using them as tools to maintain control over the galaxy. Others believe they're testing us, seeing how far we'll go before breaking. Hayes frowned, leaning closer. Do you think they could be behind what happened to Ethan? The trader hesitated, then nodded slowly. It's possible. If the Vryn acted on orders, the Krylos would be my first guess. Just tread carefully. They don't take kindly to interference. With this cryptic warning echoing in his mind, Hayes returned to Earth's embassy to relay the findings to President Laura Hayes and her advisors. The revelation sent shockwaves through the council chambers, forcing leaders to reconsider their strategy. If the Krylos are truly involved, Admiral Julia Dawson said during an emergency briefing, then this isn't just about punishing the Vryn anymore. This is about survival. President Hayes nodded gravely. Prepare the Leviathan for extended operations, she ordered. Wherever the Krylos are hiding, we'll find them, and we'll make them pay. On the warship itself, preparations intensified as the crew braced for the next phase of their mission. Targeted strikes against military installations associated with the Vryn became a priority, aiming to dismantle their infrastructure while avoiding civilian casualties whenever possible. Despite their earlier brutality, Olivia insisted on exercising restraint, a decision that sparked heated debates among the crew. Why should we care about their civilians? Argued Jake, a young soldier frustrated by the limitations placed on their attacks. They didn't hesitate to kill Ethan. Because we're not animals, Olivia countered sharply. We fight to protect, not to destroy indiscriminately. If we lose sight of that, we become no better than them. Her words silenced the dissenters, though not entirely. Tension simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Yet even amid the conflict, a sense of unity prevailed. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the crew of the Leviathan faced them together, and somewhere in the depths of space, the Krylos watched silently, their plans unfolding exactly as intended.